So my name is Jean Devaney, and I use she, her pronouns. And for those who are just listening or are visually challenged, I'm a 72-year-old salt and pepper haired woman of average height and slightly overnourished, as my medical file describes me. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and gray pants, and I am this morning's worship associate. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your image of the holy, we are glad you are here. Every week, a brand new community is created. We never know who will pass through these doors looking for a friendly smile, a comforting hug, a welcoming space. And so, in many ways, there has never been a gathering exactly like this one. And that's why it matters that each and every one of you is here today. Those words are slightly new in our service, and I love them. It matters that each and every one of you are here today. Whether this is your first time at UUCE or your 100th time or more, everyone is invited to our welcoming room after the service. It's located in the south foyer, and there you can ask and help to answer questions about who we are and what we are all about. If you're joining us from Zoom, the link to our visitor form is being dropped into the chat now. We don't pass out paper programs anymore, but you can use your phone to scan the QR codes that are scattered on the walls throughout the building. There's one right there by the door. It'll take you to today's order of service, and we also have large print copies that you can get from one of our ushers. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for helping to create the beloved community. Throughout the world, Unitarian Universalists use the flaming chalice as a symbol of our faith. We light it whenever we gather to do the work of our beloved community. The flame is the light of truth, the beacon of a liberating faith. The cup or chalice is the eternal source of love. And now, let's say together the words of our mission, which affirm our shared purpose. Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve our world.
Hello, my name is Ryan Doppelmayr. My pronouns are she, her, a 42-year-old white woman in a purple dress. And I'm going to invite any kids or youth or grown-ups who'd like to hear a story a little bit closer to come up and join me. Pull up a carpet square and come and join me. The story we're telling today does not have pictures, but we're going to use our imagination. And before I start, do any of you do any work? What? You might say, I'm only 8 years old, I'm only 11 years old, I'm only 6 years old, I can't have a job. But, I mean, that's not really what I'm asking. Is there any work that you do? Yeah.
I do work for you here.
Oh, yes. Sometimes Griffin and Phoenix are my assistants here during the week. I have to admit that. They get paid with smoothies. Anyone else? Any work? Sometimes when I was a younger one, I scooped dog poop in the backyard.
I don't have
Or I emptied the dishwasher. Or I folded towels.
I've heard
Whoa. Sorry.
I've heard some grown-ups say that you can't there's some work about like stuff that you have to work on for something.
Okay, so maybe work that you do is like practicing?
Yeah, and like you have to work on your anger and controlling that.
Yeah, that is big, important work for sure.
Well, I guess that I have to scoop cat litter a bunch.
Yeah, taking care of our pets.
Yeah, and I went with my stepdad to get this cat litter box that doesn't need scooping. Well, slightly. You might have to scoop it, but
Oh, that's an upgrade. Yeah. All right.
I test the food.
Oh, okay. You test the food. That seems like a pretty good job.
We work to earn money.
Yeah, lots of people do. And yeah, sometimes we work just to help other people in our families or in our households. Or sometimes we work for something that we think is really important. Like we might write letters to send a message or be in a protest or something. Or yeah, I think the most important work that my kids do, my big kids, is help keep their little sister safe and keep her entertained. I think that's really important work. Okay. All right, so keeping that in mind, that we all have some work to do. Bertie, I'm going to tell you a little story now, and I have to peek because I forgot that this story is by Margaret Stevens. Okay. Oh, I don't think that's a good job to annoy people. Okay. So once upon a time, there was an older gentleman. He went to bed, and he died. But he woke up in a beautiful place. It was gorgeous. The sun was shining, there were waterfalls, there was a beach. It was so comfortable. And someone came up to him in a white jacket and robe and said, "Here you may have anything you wish, any of the delicacies of the world, any food you'd like, any entertainments you can think of." Wow, that was pretty exciting. So, he ate so many donuts, some pizza. He started playing Minecraft all day long. Man, and watched some movies, maybe read some comic books, had a little more pizza. A few days went by. Sounds pretty good, right? But one day, this guy, he got bored. So he called the attendant over and said, "You know what? I need something to do. Is there some work that you can give me?" And the attendant said, "I'm sorry, sir. That is the one thing I cannot do. That is the one thing there is not any here for you." And you know what he said? He said, I might as well be in hell." And the attendant leaned over and whispered, "Where do you think you are?" What would you think about that? If there's, you got some really good stuff. But like donuts are pretty darn good, but there's nothing that you're supposed to do? No ways to help? No ways that you can really be of use to someone else? That might not be so good. All right, I'm going to invite you guys now to our classroom, but before I forget, I have an announcement for everyone here because we've got a class that's starting soon. In 2 weeks, called Trans Inclusion in Congregations. And I'm inviting anyone and everyone here to come and learn with us about making sure we are working together towards building a beloved community of inclusion. And it's going to be here in the chapel on Thursdays from 6 to 8, starting September 7th. And I would love some company. And so would Liz. Liz is going to be there with me too. And also, next week, do you think you guys could maybe do a little work next week?
I'm probably going to have to feed the cats at home.
You're going to feed the cats at home? Maybe you can help me collect trash here too, because next Sunday is our Labor of Love Sunday. And we're going to all think about ways after the service that we can help around here. Sounds good. All right.
Good Sunday morning, everyone. My name is Jen Youngsun, and I am this congregation's minister. I use the pronouns she and her, and I am 50-something years old, and I've got shoulder-length hair, and I'm wearing black, and today I've got on my purple UUMA stole. This is the UU Ministers Association stole that they gave me after I served on their board for 6 years. That's some work. So Ryan did mention that next week is Labor of Love, and so these next 2 Sundays are kind of a set or a series where we are inviting you to consider work as a spiritual practice. Along the way, we'll talk about the difference between a job and work, and we'll talk about fair wages and child labor. Next week, we'll bless backpacks and briefcases and whatever tools you use in your work. And we're going to offer next week a hand blessing before we go outside to do a little labor of love. For those who are going to be on Zoom or who are not able to be in the garden, I'm going to be leading a conversation right here in the sanctuary. So there's something for everyone. So here's a story that's known to probably many of you. Once upon a time, there was a traveler who came across 3 individuals. They were doing stonework. And the traveler approached the first one and asked, "What are you doing?" And the first person said, "Oh, can't you see I'm very, very busy here? I'm just cutting some stone." And that wasn't a very satisfying answer, and so the traveler went to the next person and said, "Excuse me, but what are you doing?" And this person was a little nicer and said, "Well, I'm cutting stone. I'm trying to make enough money to support my family." And the traveler thought, "Oh, this is very interesting. I wonder what the third person is going to say." And so the traveler approached the third person, and the third person said, "Oh, me? What am I doing? I am building a cathedral." So this reminds me of a similar story that I heard about Steve Jobs from Apple fame. When he was trying to get John Sculley to work for him, he just badgered and badgered, and he just couldn't make any headway with John Sculley. Now, John Sculley at that time was the CEO of PepsiCo. He had a proper job already. And so Steve, apparently so frustrated that he couldn't persuade John, said, "What do you want to do? Just spend your whole life selling sugared water, or do you want a chance to save the world?" And of course, John finally did say yes. I don't know. Has Apple saved the world? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's too soon to say. Is there any job that cannot be done with an attitude of dignity and worthiness? Come, let us consider the world of work and the work of the world. Come, let us worship together. So today I'd like to invite all of us to create a prayer together. In the Unitarian Universalist faith, we don't have this idea that there's only one cleric, one minister who can talk to the divine. We are all capable of doing that, and we're all capable of creating prayer together. I want to let you know that we're going to change something about the way we do this book of joys and sorrows over here. Each week, anytime during the service, you have a chance to go up there and write in the book what your prayers, what your sorrows, what your joys are. You have a chance to light a candle, place a stone in water, whatever feels right to you that day. Starting next month, sometime, we're going to start bringing the book up to the front and reading from it, just so that we can hear the voices of this congregation. This idea came out of the listening circle that we held last Saturday. A lot of good ideas came from that. If you see some changes, they probably came out of that listening circle. If you didn't have a chance to come to that, you can still email me with any ideas and suggestions. If you would like your name called out in the book, just make sure that you write your name legibly in it. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of knit together a prayer with the words in there without calling anybody's name. I know a lot of people don't put their names in the book. So we start by calling the name of that which we consider most holy and divine. O Spirit of life, O precious one, O ground of being, O amazing universe. Here are the things that we are carrying in our hearts. Here are the things that are breaking our hearts today. Go ahead and call them out. Smoke and fire.
Violence.
The violence. Health issues. The wars never ending. Authoritarianism. Dysfunctional, troubled family members. Societal apathy.
The death of a young one.
The death of a young one.
The death of my son.
The death of children. Another racially motivated shooting, hatred, killing, and taking more lives. The death of a dear friend. A friend who needs surgery. Mm. Oh Lord, these are the things breaking our hearts today. These are the things that are troubling our souls. We are ever grateful that there is a place that will receive those things and will hold in care those worries and those sorrows and those heartbreaks. Sometimes there is nothing that we can do about these things, but we can share them with the people we love and trust. We can name them. We can release them from our minds and put them out into the world and pray for healing. And we heal oftentimes by naming those things that we are so thankful for. O Spirit of life, we are ever thankful for healing, for community, for family and friends. We are ever grateful for rain, the promise of rain. Compassion, the fact that compassion even exists in our world. The fact that this community of strangers and friends can gather and lift up things like love.
I'm grateful to live in freedom.
Yes. Yes. We do live in freedom.
Air conditioning.
We are grateful for air conditioning. Yeah. Those who have air conditioning, if you don't have air conditioning, you're always welcome to come to this place. It seems like the air is always on.
True love.
We are grateful
True love.
for true love. Thank you. Yes. Yes. And for the people who make the coffee. Yeah, the season of harvest. Yes. And animals. Ever grateful, our hearts continue to expand. Ever grateful, our hearts are willing to be open even in the face of despair. Ever grateful, we are willing to hope. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
So the reading this morning speaks to the need, the imperative to be of use. And it's from one of my favorite authors, Marge Piercy. The people I love the best jump into work head first, without dallying in the shallows, and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm. When the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is as common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphorous for wine or oil, Hopi vessels that hold corn. These are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real.
So when humans were first starting out upon this earth, there was little difference between a person's life and the activities they carried out to ensure that they had their basic needs met. You know, food, water, shelter, clothing, all of it was living. The medieval mystics and philosophers supported this idea that human work was a reflection of the goodness of creation. Thomas Aquinas defined work as a display of good activity. The Benedictine nun Hildegard of Bingen said that when human beings are engaged in good work, they become a flowering orchard pervading the universe and making the cosmic wheel go round. And then people started to specialize. Like, how about if you tend the goats and I'll plant the crops, and then you repair the tools and you make some shoes? And because it takes a lot longer to make a bushel of beans than it does to make a pair of shoes, we invented debt, which is what Daniel talked about a couple of weeks ago, right? As we progressed, there was even more separation between our daily activities and the things that we do to make sure that we have enough food and shelter and things like that. And then we even had different spaces where we did those things. We call the first space, home, right? Home is first space. Office or work site is second space. And then this thing that we're in right now, third space, public space. Industrial technology replaced much of the manual labor that was done previously, moving a lot of people into service jobs and knowledge work. In the near future, digital technology like AI, artificial intelligence, may decrease the need for service and knowledge workers, creating a demand for manual labor jobs. Because AI could make more online jobs obsolete, while plumbers, they still need to be either in a building or under a building. In the story of the Garden of Eden, the work of tilling and keeping was part of the delight of this place, this piece of heaven on earth. Work was not a drudgery. It was an activity of co-creation, an activity of cooperation with the universe. But then modern day preachers got into the mix and messed things up and turned this way of kind of this positive theology of work, turned it into something else. They started to teach that work is the punishment that we must bear for our sins. Using that part of the book of Genesis where Adam and Eve are evicted from the garden for disobeying one of God's rules, where God tells them that now they would have to toil for their food, many preachers interpreted that as curse. We are now cursed and alienated from the earth and from the original dignity and blessing of work. And that's how a lot of people these days view their jobs, as a curse, as an obligation, as a drudgery, as a chore. Hating their jobs, just working for the weekend, dreaming of the day they can tell their boss to take this job and... Workers are so stressed out these days. They're stressed out by their jobs. They're stressed out by the lack of a good job. They don't make enough money. Workloads are unmanageable. Performance expectations keep going up and up and up. They're not getting a share of profits, and their supervisors and coworkers are unbearable. There's a recent survey that showed that 30% of workers in the US personally observed ethical misconduct in their workplace in the last year. For a lot of people, work has become a curse rather than the blessing that it was meant to be. Together, we have co-created an economic system that does not value people and does not value the earth. It's a system that values jobs more than work. When I joined my first UU congregation a million years ago, we had this mug painting party, and on my mug I wrote, "We make a living from what we get, and we make a life from what we give." I didn't know that was a Winston Churchill quote at the time. I just liked the way it sounded. I was approaching 30 at that time, and I had had so many jobs up until that point, and I had still not found my work. A job pays the bills. A job comes from the outside. It's shaped by threats and promises. The threat of not having your basic needs met, and the promise of more paychecks. The importance of having a job is, I guess, obvious, and so is the suffering that comes with not having a job. Now, work, on the other hand, is spiritual. It's spiritual in that it connects me to something greater than myself and my own ego. Work, as described in this way, is often unpaid, right? Now, ideally, every single one of us could find a situation in life where we could be sure of having sufficient food, shelter, clean water, and security for our families while we get to do our work. And I know that a lot of you have found that. I've talked to you about your work and in your jobs, and you're happy with where you are, and you're very satisfied that you're able to do work that aligns with your values and who you are on the inside. And I'm really glad for that. Is that really too much to hope for everyone? I mean, I think that's what the entertainment industry workers are fighting for right now as they're on strike. Right? They want to be able to be creative and make things that are beautiful and to be able to pay their bills and support their families. Much of our society still operates out of an industrial, machine-based worldview. And so that job is just another cog in the economic machine. Actually, the word job comes from a very, very old word meaning gob, or a lump of work. It's a cog in the machine. The value of this lump of work goes into the gross national product. It is the lump that is valued more than the person, more than the whole of the soul performing the work. When we forget the value of work for the sake of profit, then we will do whatever it takes to get the job done, right? When we lose this sense of work, it's not only the soul that is numbed, but it is also the living earth and all of its creatures who are harmed. When the job, for example, calls for cutting costs and increasing profits, then almost any action is allowed. So here's Company X. They choose to pay the EPA fines rather than to stop polluting the water next to their plant. And there is a human being at Company X who said yes to this option, right? And this is one human being that goes home at night and faces the same silence we all do at the end of a day. And I can't help but to wonder what their soul says to them, or what their soul is trying to say to them. And I wonder what this person has to do to shut down that inner voice. And what about the supervisors who hired children as young as 13 to work in a meatpacking plant in Arkansas and Colorado and Minnesota and Nebraska? What is their inner being trying to say to them? You know, for a long time, we had been making progress and the number of child labor violations was going down. And then, at around 2017, for some reason, they started going back up. We started hearing more about reports of children working in dangerous places. Often they are child of immigrants and migrants, working in dangerous factories or working in fast food restaurants, hours way beyond what school children are supposed to be working. There are jobs, right? Lumps of work that are so highly valued that the machine seems to have an endless appetite for them. But what about work that doesn't fit into the gears and belts of the economic engine? What about the work of parents and grandparents raising children? What about the work of volunteers helping nonprofits to achieve their missions? What about the work of adult children who are caring for their aging parents? When people don't hold a job, a gob or a lump, the message from the economic machinery is that they don't hold any value. This is the message we all hear, and if we're not careful, we start believing that some people are less valuable than others, and if we're not careful, we start acting as though some people are less worthy than others. I mean, human bodies are basically the same, right? Each needs a few thousand calories a day. We all need to be able to clean ourselves and have a safe, warm place to sleep each night. Each human heart needs a little bit of love. So how is it that we have co-created a system that allows the abject poverty of some humans while other humans earn billions of dollars? A system where the richest 400 Americans pay a lower tax rate than the average American. During the pandemic, the number of people living in poverty in our country dropped by 20 million people. 20 million people no longer lived in poverty during the pandemic. That proves that we have the means to provide everyone in this country with the basic necessities of life. But as soon as the pandemic was over, that aid all went away. It was incredibly difficult for a lot of people, including many people in this congregation. Get a job seemed to be the message. The pandemic is over, go get a job. Well, that is not an option for millions and millions and millions of people. Because we have a hard time seeing the difference between a job and work. When we don't have a job, we feel like people are judging us. We may feel shame or hopeless or useless. We may feel like we don't have a life that's worth living even. But even without a job, everyone can still have work. Everyone can still have a life of worth and dignity. We still have not figured out how to dismantle the current economic system that withholds the necessities of life from millions while heaping luxurious things upon just a few. But I will tell you that as each one of us engages in good activity during the day, we are all doing our part to push on the arc of the moral universe so that it bends toward a just economy. It doesn't matter if you have a job or not. We can all engage in that kind of work. As long as you are bringing your gifts to bring a little more happiness to other people or animals or plants and trees and birds, as long as you are doing something every day that builds up the community rather than tearing it down, as long as you are loving the world as best you can and letting it love you back, that, my friends, is worthy work. May it be so. Amen. Now let's say together the words of our chalice extinguishing and closing. Here we are. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And as you go out, I invite you to greet the people around you, especially the ones that you haven't met yet. And now, as you go, leaving this place into the wider world, may the divine bless you and keep you. May the divine smile upon you and bring you peace. Go in love, my friends.